So when we talk about the Form W-9, here are the steps I really want you to pay attention to. It's important to really understand that Form W-9 is a simple one-page form. So not 2 or 3 or 4 pages, but simple one-page form that includes detailed instructions. And freelancers and independent contractors should actually fill out the top part of the form first with the following information needed. So if you are a freelancer, if you are an independent contractor, I want you to listen closely, okay? And I want you to look right now on the screen. So we have this is how the latest, the most updated form W-9 looks like. And the cool thing is that W-9 is actually a request for a taxpayer identification number and certification. So you have so number one, you have the name as shown on your tax return. There has to be the same name, okay? First name, last name. And you have the business name if different from the name above on line 1. And you also have on line 3, you have to check the appropriate box for the federal tax classification. Again, remember, we are talking about an independent contractor, but this could be an individual, sole proprietor, or a single member LLC. In other words, you can be a disregarded entity in the eyes of the IRS. You can be a C corporation, an S corporation, a partnership, a trust/estate. A partnership here, it basically means a multi-member LLC. If you're a multi-member LLC, you can actually elect to be taxed as a partnership or an S corporation or a C corporation. And number 4, you have to put any appropriate exemption codes for entities, not individuals. And in most circumstances, the exemptions box is left blank. The rare exceptions that we have seen in our experience is that this is relates to corporations that are exempt from backup withholding and payees who are exempt from reporting according to the Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act, and this is important. So, and number 5, you have the address. Number 6, you have the city, the state, and zip code. Everything has to match. Okay, we are speaking about the information you are going to put in your tax return anyway. And number 7, you need to list account numbers. This is optional. In many cases, you will leave this section blank unless you have a specific need for a freelancer or independent contractor bank account information. And so this is kind of important. By the way, boss, welcome back to the show. It's really a pleasure to have you here. Make yourself comfortable. You are going to enjoy today's conversation. Part 1. So you can see on the screen here. So part 1 of the form W-9 is actually where the individual will enter their tax identification number, their TIN, and which is either the social security number or employer identification number. So it can be a SSN or EIN. As you can see this on the screen here. And it's always 9 digits anyway. Whether we are speaking about a social security number or an employer identification number, we have 9 digits. So this is part 1. Part 2 actually is where the individual certifies that the taxpayer identification number, the TIN, listed is the correct number. And this is the contractor who has to certify that. And that they are not subject to backup withholding, that they are citizens of the United States, or that they have green card, right? And the 4th certification here is that any FATCA code entered on the form is correct. So the thing is that the IRS and the U.S. Treasury Department at large wants to have a clear idea that you are going by the right FATCA code. And the thing here is that it's one of those things where you have to understand that FATCA actually stands for the Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act. And this is a law that requires U.S. citizens living at home or abroad to file annual reports on any foreign account holdings they have. And so the purpose here is, as you can imagine, is to end tax evasion by American individuals and businesses who invest, operate, and earn taxable income abroad. And so this is the second part. And the last step requires the freelancer or independent contractor to sign and date the form and return this form to the requester to keep it on file. So if you are a small business, you are listening to me right now, you will keep this document on file. Remember, neither the individual completing the form nor the business or any entity requesting it is required to file the form with the IRS. It's just for archiving purposes. And completing Form W-9 is a straightforward process. But if the parties involved choose not to stay on Uncle Sam's good side, there can be pretty serious repercussions. By the way, boss, I want to quickly remind you of today's topic. We are having a conversation about the Form W-9. I'm just walking you through this form so you have a clear idea about what to actually expect when you think about Form W-9. Let me give you the overview here. When we think about Form W-9, it's really important to understand that it's all about transparency, accountability, and efficiency. Not only in terms of the IRS, but also in terms of the independent contractor that you are hiring or that you plan to hire. Okay, so you want to use IRS Form W-9 to request a vendor or independent contractor's taxpayer identification number and certification. So there are two things that you are actually pursuing. If you send a W-9 to a contractor, you want to have their TIN number, and their TIN, remember, their TIN can be what? It can be their social security number, or it can be their employer identification number. Either social or EIN. So you are looking for that, but you're also looking for a certification. And employers must obtain a Form W-9 from any vendor or independent contractor that they will pay more than $600 in a calendar year. So we're speaking about $600. This is the threshold that you need to abide by. And so remember that the payee, not the employer, must fill out Form W-9. So the burden of proof is on the payee, the person receiving the cash from you, okay? And according to the IRS, a Form W-9 must be actually kept on file by employers for 4 years. So 4 years, this is actually the regulatory threshold the IRS goes by. It's really important to really understand that you want to just archive any information about contractors and freelancers that you are occasionally employing. I'm just speaking to you, small business owner, okay? And it's one of those things where you just want to have the archiving in place, so if the IRS needs it, you're able to pull it out real fast. So it is just a simple IRS document that lets you send your TIN to a person, organization, or bank if you are a freelancer. And your TIN can be the employer identification number or social. One thing I want to say here is that it's one of those things, it's kind of similar to what we call information return, because it provides someone with relevant information about a taxpayer. They don't have to file anything, but yeah, it's just more like a FYI. Let's talk about timing here. So when do you need to use the Form W-9? Well, it really depends. So the thing is that anytime you hire a freelancer or independent contractor for your business, you should ask them to complete a Form W-9. It's really a must-have, even if the person worked for a short period of time, because every time a person pays a freelancer or independent contractor a total of $600 or more during the calendar year, that party is required to file information returns using Form 1099 NEC. And in some cases, it can be 1099 MIS, okay? And it's one of those things where you have to really, if you want to abide by your taxpayer obligation, you want to have that. Now, the thing here is that there is something called backup withholding. So the process of backup withholding is one of the unfortunate consequences that can result from information submitted to the IRS that doesn't match IRS records. So the IRS requires that businesses impose and remit a 24% backup withholding tax on all future payments made to a contractor until the IRS receives the correct information. And so examples of payments that may be subject to a backup withholding includes like rents, for instance, royalties, and interest. And so the main takeaway is that getting W-9s completed prior to an employee's start date completely and accurately should go a long way toward reducing the likelihood that a company will need to use the backup withholding process, okay? And so, and in addition to that, most contractors and freelancers want to avoid this step, and they are likely to complete Form W-9 for you without any sort of pressure anyway. One thing I want to say here is that it's all about, even though you don't have to file the data with the IRS, the burden of archiving actually rests on you. You have to actually have the proper controls and the processes in place to make sure the data that you receive from a contractor or a freelancer is well saved, well archived, so that if the IRS needs that form, you are able to pull out that form at a moment's notice. And one thing I also need to say is that it's just a lot better to archive things electronically, and as opposed to doing paper archiving. By the way, boss, I want to quickly remind you of today's topic. We are having a conversation about Form W-9. Let's talk about when should you file Form W-9, or who files Form W-9 in the first place. I think I've explained a little bit here and there, but I want to really nail down the specific cases that really bring about the filing of Form W-9. Okay, now that not everyone requires a W-9 form for their daily business. You only need to fill out and send this form to someone in this 4 situations. Only 4 situations. Okay, now you should fill out a W-9 if you're a freelancer, independent contractor, or consultant who earns more than $600 from a single project or client over a tax year, 12 months. In this case, you need to send a completed Form W-9, because what will happen here is that once the company pays you as a contractor, they will have to send you a Form 1099 NEC or Form 1099 MIS, so that you can actually add it to your 1040 and Schedule C when you file your tax returns at the end of the year. So that's the first scenario. Second scenario is that if you are opening a bank account, you might be asked to fill out a W-9 form by the bank. The third scenario is that in case you invest money with the bank or another financial institution, you might need a W-9 or other types of 1099 forms. This documents report information like distributions, proceeds, or interest income from real estate transactions as well. So that's the third scenario, if you will. And the last one is that if you owe someone a debt, let's say 10 grand or 100 grand for that matter, and they decide to cancel or forgive it, you need to provide a W-9 certificate to them so they can file tax returns effectively. Remember, when we talk about debt forgiveness, this is the income to you. So those are things you need to be aware of. So apart from those 4 scenarios, be very careful about sending someone a W-9 form, as it might actually be a security breach for your personal information. And it's one of those things where you have to be extra careful. If you are confused, call customer service or let us know in the comment section, and we'll certainly get back to you and let you know how the situation can shape up for you. And there are some ways you can get people to file their W-9 tax forms. Consider sending your contractors the W-9 form well in advance, even if their billing amount is lower than $600. That's the first one. You can also make it a rule to collect the W-9 form before issuing payments to contractors so that the procedure gets completed on time. So if you have this as a prerequisite, you are going to get your information collected real fast. So the bottom line here is that whether we are speaking about the federal level or the state level, it's important to understand that you want to send a W-9 form from, like, if you want to report income, different kinds of income to the IRS. I'm speaking here about freelancing, contract jobs, and other self-employment avenues. So it doesn't really matter whether the person works in one state or in multiple states. I mean, let's say your company is sending someone to one state, one geography, or several geographies. You'll still need to fill out this form at the federal level. And one thing I need to really understand here, I want you to understand here, is that you have to look at the state side of things as well, because some states have different laws in terms of reporting income that you pay to a freelancer or a contractor. Okay, now when should you not send someone a W-9 form? Because I've already told you circumstances where you have to send a W-9 form, but there are circumstances also where you do not have to send a W-9 form. Okay, and so the thing is that, again, based on what I told you earlier, the Form W-9 actually has a lot of information about you, right? Including your social security number. And people can use, like, if you have nefarious characters, they can use your social for other stuff, okay? And often scammers use this tactics to collect personal information. So you should be extra careful before sharing this information. You should not send a W-9 if you have received it from someone who is not your client, and has no business association with you. This includes friends, acquaintances, and strangers. I'm talking if someone unrelated to the client has sent you a W-9 form, ask them you want to ask them probing questions. Find out which forms they intend to send to you in return and exactly why they need this form. And if you're not convinced by their response, consult a CPA, an EA, or a tax professional or a tax attorney before choosing to provide the information. And even if your employer doesn't need to have access to your W-9 information, it's one of those things where you have to make sure that if they ever ask you, you have the right answers, the right questions for them. So don't send your W-9 to your employer without proper verification. Ideally, your employer should deal with the W-4 unless you're an independent contractor. If you have a full-time job as an employee, you do not need to provide a W-9 because your personal information must be at your own discretion, and really you do not want to reveal it all the time. I want to talk to you about penalties for non-compliance with the Form W-9 because there are penalties. So basically you have several types of negative consequences. You have criminal penalties. So providing false information on a W-9 can result in criminal penalties, which can include fines and in some cases even prison. Yeah, the thing is that a lot of folks think, well, I'm not going to prison if I just lie on a W-9 form, but the W-9 form is a legal document and the IRS takes it very seriously. So you have criminal penalties, you have monetary penalties. Of course, you probably thought about it, right? I mean, if you have criminal penalties, you are going to have financial penalties. So failure to complete a W-9 or refusing to complete one can result in a monetary penalty for vendors and contractors alike. You have to think also about the backup withholding. So a vendor or independent contractor providing erroneous information on a W-9 or not providing a completed W-9 is subject to backup withholding of 24% of earnings on all future payments. So the thing is that freelancers and independent contractors, when you really think about it, they're not the only ones that can be penalized. So business owners can face penalties as well for multiple reasons. For example, not having signed a W-9 form on file, or the refusal by a contractor or vendor to provide a signed W-9 does not excuse the business from filing timely. Misuse of the information provided on a W-9, including a TIN or a Social Security number, can result in both civil and criminal penalties. And filing 1099s late or not at all both carry penalties, as does filing mistaken information, with fines ranging from $50 all the way to $350 per 1099. We're speaking about this is a piece, okay? Thank you so much for your attention. I really appreciate it. Let me quickly recap to this conversation. So I was just talking to you about the Form W-9. So I give you the steps, the overview, and now the recap. Thank you so much. God bless you. I'll see you next time. Until then, remember, stay marvelous.